Hey guys, welcome back to ADHD Answers on this beautiful and oddly warm Monday morning, Monday afternoon. It's noon. So I hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Today we are going to talk about ADHD emotions, and then we're going to have a Q&A like we always do every Monday here. So if you have questions, go ahead and start spitting them out, and I can see them as they come up, and then I'll get to them after I'm done with this, real brief discussion on ADHD and emotions. So I had a really good question from Leah asking about what to do about anger outbursts in the moment. I think it's a really good question, one I hadn't thought of even addressing, is how volatile emotions can be for the ADHDer. And I think it's important to note that a lot of that comes from our impulsivity. Our impulsivity being our quick reaction to things, or quick reaction to do things, want to do something. We don't have a buffer time to think before we act yet. I mean, there are ways to build in that buffer time, but especially if your child is very young, that buffer time is very, very small. And if they're an ADHDer, it's almost like they're right on top of each other between thought and action. The way that I kind of describe it, especially if the child is young, is that impulsivity is more like instinct. Everything they do is instinct to instinct to instinct. It's like a reaction. So the example that I give is driving a car. So if you're driving the car and someone merges into your lane and almost, clips your front tire, then, you're going to jerk, you're going to slam on the brakes, you're going to do something to avoid that from happening. And there is no conversation in your mind about, oh, I see this guy, coming into my lane. I need to definitely put my foot on the brake. I definitely need to turn the wheel so many degrees just to avoid him. No, it's just bam, bam, bam. Everybody's safe. And I often use that as an example because that's more often than not, that's how the ADHDer is operating moment by moment, especially if they're already heightened. So that's kind of an easy overall view of how we're dealing with emotions, or how we kind of how we're able to deal with them or not deal with our emotions. But I think going back to the question is what to do about anger, is there's a wonderful book, and I have it pulled up on my Audible account, that I didn't even think to tell you guys about, or even it just didn't even pop in my head until today. And that book is called The Whole Brain Child: 12 Revolutionary Strategies to Nurture Your Child's Developing Mind, Survive Everyday Parenting Struggles, and Help Your Family Thrive. And that is by the author's not on here, Dr. Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. And Dr. Dan Siegel is very well known. I just listened to a podcast with him. He is very well known in the neuroscience world. So anything dealing with the brain and how the brain works and why it does the way it does, and how we can change the way our brain does the things that it does, he's leading the research in those things. And that's kind of why he helped write this book, The Whole Brain Child, which I think is an amazing book. I have the book on Audible, and I have a hard copy workbook for parents to kind of work through after they've read the book. So I would highly recommend, I would probably recommend that every parent to read that book at least like every 3 years as their child develops. So as soon as their child hits, 1, it's like, all right, I need to read the book, and then keep revisiting it because there's so much stuff that's packed in there that we're going to forget. And it's also written in a way where you could read it and understand it for your 4-year-old, but by the time that 4-year-old is a teenager, the rules are different. The way you apply them are different. And it's all in there about how to adjust and transition into these different stages of your child's life. So having said all that, definitely pick up The Whole Brain Child. And the very first chapter is probably the most helpful chapter to all parents. I would probably read that. If I was a parent, I would probably read that monthly, or at the very least, listen to it on 2 to 3 times speed, just so I can revisit it and get constant reminders of what I need to be doing as a parent, which again, I'm not. So the whole first chapter is all about connect and redirect. And what they mean by connect and redirect is we have two sides of our brain. We have the left and the right, depending on how the video is going. This is my right. But anyways, we have our left and our right side of our brains. And the right side of the brain, let's see if I can remember. It's been a while since I read the book. So one side of our brain is the creative, the abstract thinker, the person, the part of the brain that wants to do art and do creative things. And the other side of the brain is the very rigid thinker, the very logical thinker, and the side of the brain that we're going to use for things like science, math, and concrete things. So on the one side, the creative side is where we have all of our emotions. That's where all of our emotions come from. And the right side of the brain is where things like rules and boundaries and structures come from. Okay. So if we can conceptualize that these are two sides of the brain, and there is sort of I think the way they describe it in the book is different, but the way that I'll describe it is there's like the Grand Canyon in between. Okay. There's a canyon in between the two sides of the brain. And what connect and redirect, what that skill and strategy is all about, is connecting these two sides of the brain. Okay. So we want to connect the emotional side of the brain to the rules side of the brain. That way, in the moment, we can help them understand, what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, and help them navigate those things. So in the moment, connecting is all about addressing what's actually happening with the child. So Leah, if your child is angry and is having a tantrum or fit or yelling or screaming, what have you, what they suggest is connecting to that emotion and just reflecting what you're seeing, just reflecting what they're feeling. And I think more often than not, in my experience, especially with boys, we are so disconnected from our emotions that we don't even know what we're feeling. This is an extreme example, but I did have an ADHDer years ago who was going to be 18. And I remember he was just clearly pissed. And I was like, what are you feeling right now? And he was like, I don't even know. And I've been working with him for months, and he truly did not know what he was feeling. He could not recognize it. So this connect and redirect strategy really helps your child address and label emotions that they're having. That way they can tell you later on, or that way they at least know what's going on in their body. Because there's nothing more scary than having something happen to your body and not know what it is, what it's going to do, how it's going to happen, why it's happening. And another point, I think it's another strategy, is addressing, how long that's going to last. Because some children may not have a timetable, or they may not be able to conceptualize that, oh, this is temporary. Like my emotions and the way that I feel is just temporary. It's only going to happen for a little bit. Or, if something like you slam, I distinctly remember slamming my finger on the car door. Something as simple as like, how long do you think this pain is going to last? And that kind of totally opens up a new paradigm to this child who has never had this experience before, to say, oh, yes, this hurts, but it's only temporary, and it maybe only last a little while. And they probably will give some outlandish things. Like I've gotten answers that are like, this is for weeks, and I know the child's too young to have any conceptualization of how long weeks and months are. So that's another teachable moment that you could help them kind of get from point A to point B with how things are going to happen and why they're happening. But to kind of bring it all the way back, what we want to do is we want to connect to their, again, I can't remember what side of the brain it is. I want to say right, but don't quote me, by the book. We want to connect to that side of the brain where they're having the emotion, where that emotion is taking place. And when we do that enough, and the child is heard, and the child begins to understand what they're feeling and why they're feeling it, and what it actually is, what that emotion is called, they can start slowly coming down. And it's not an immediate thing. And the authors do a wonderful job. If you have an Audible account, I would highly recommend buying the audiobook, because it's read by the authors, which is, to me, I love when books are read by the authors, because you kind of get their emotions and their feelings that they had while they were writing it. And there's a little bit more gravity to it. And they will admit, there's a story that the other author, Tina, I can't remember what her name is, something Bryson, Payne Bryson. where she says that she did this whole week-long certification for all these peoples on the whole brain strategy and how to best use it, and how, she trained a bunch of parents to utilize it. And she got on her flight to go home, got home, and she hadn't seen her kids in a week, and the kids started acting up, and she was totally not in that space. And she had just taught it to a bunch of people, but she wasn't there. She wasn't able to have the wherewithal to bring it to that instance. And then they even are open and honest about saying it's not going to work 100% of the time, because sometimes, as we all know, as parents and as adults, sometimes we just don't want to do what we know what we should do. We don't want to. The classic example is if you are telling your spouse or your friend, "Hey, I think you should do X, Y, and Z," and they don't do it. They never do it. And then some random person suggests that, and they come to you and they, "Oh man, I had this really great idea that I'm going to do this." And you're like, "Oh my gosh, I've been telling you to do that for months. Why aren't you listening to me?" It's the same thing. Sometimes we just need to hear from a different person, or sometimes we just are so stubborn and adamant about not doing it that we're just not going to. So it's not going to work all the time. And it takes a while for the child to begin to kind of scaffold each one of these experiences where you are connecting with them, to be able to use all of those instances to kind of get better at regulating themselves. And again, you may go, a whole month where they are regulating themselves really well, and then one day, not so much. So connecting. So yeah, I would connect with them and just reflect what you're seeing. You're really angry right now, and don't do it in a patronizing, condescending kind of way, but be honest and be genuine, because you do love your child, and you want them to know that you love them, and you are helping them label what's going on with them, and that can be done lovingly. You're really angry right now. I can see that you're really angry. You're so angry that you're throwing things. That must be really, really hard. You're very frustrated right now because you're having to do homework, and homework can be really tough for you. And just reflecting, not asking any questions, but just kind of repeating over and over and over again. And in all honesty, I've actually done this stuff for like 20 minutes before with when I worked in community mental health, for like 20 minutes with a kid who was just like destroying the house. And at like minute 19, I was like, this is not going to work. I just need to abandon this and try something else. And finally, after 20 minutes, I was like, "I'm really sorry you're angry right now." And he stopped and looked at me and said, "I am really angry right now." And I was like, "All right, cool. We got somewhere." So that instance, it took 20 minutes. And that was actually the first day that I met him. And in subsequent sessions, it was much easier to connect with him. And then, actually, months later, I tried to do the exact same thing. No success. Again, it was 20 minutes and nothing happened, and we had to move on to something else. So sometimes it's not going to work, but I heavily, heavily suggest you buy the book, The Whole Brain Child. Definitely read the first chapter, Connect and Redirect. And once you can get the connect down, I think you set your child up for knowing and understanding what's going on in their body, but also beginning to connect with your child and say, "I'm in this with you. Like I'm here with you. I'm not just trying to head for the hills when you're angry or whatever." The second part of that is redirect. Is once you've connected with them, they sort of come down. Their emotions kind of drop. They have a little more calm and collection, and they're able to hear the rules, the boundaries, the consequences. And so what you've done with connect is you've literally connected one side of the brain to the other via a bridge. And of course, the bridge isn't it's not going to work every time, but it gets stronger over time, which I think is really, really helpful and encouraging as as your child gets older. And once the redirect comes along, it's processing. I noticed that you were very, very angry earlier, and you threw X, Y, and Z. You threw the car, and it hit the wall, and that's not okay. We can't do that because it's dangerous. And you can go through all the rules. It's dangerous. It's not safe. We don't throw cars. When you throw cars, these are the consequences. So now that you know these things, this is the consequence that we have to put in place because you threw the car. And then they're in a place to actually be able to hear and understand what's going on. And this, the first couple times, the first month of doing this whole process could take 30 minutes to an hour. But we're really setting up your child for a lifelong success in understanding what's going on in their brain and what's going on in their body emotionally, which I think as our society moves towards more technology-based things, is going to be, the secret sauce. The person who's calm, collected, and understands and can control their emotions is going to win in the end. And this is, the return on an investment is, decades. But in the moment, I think it'll help them as well. And as you guys go on into their life in subsequent weeks and months, they'll get stronger and better able to handle that stuff. So I think I had another point about redirect. I don't remember. Oh yeah, this is what it was. I want you to think about the easiest example is to think about a time that you were angry with your spouse, and afterwards you had to apologize because you knew that you were wrong. You absolutely knew that you were wrong. When you're so angry, it is really, really hard to think logistically and think logically. So you may be 100% wrong, but if you're in such a rage, you cannot think logically because you haven't connected and redirected. You don't have that skill yet. That's why we're teaching this to our children so they can have that skill. So when your child does something and you immediately want to give a consequence, all right, you're getting time out. They are not in a place to actually process that information constructively and link it to the behavior. It's just, oh, this is a consequence. This is just bad. And this escalates my emotions even more. They can't even hear it. They might as well be deaf. So think about how logistic you are able to be when you're furious and angry. So it's our ability to do that goes down, which is why we're bringing this to our kids now. So once again, that book is The Whole Brain Child by Dr. Dan Siegel and Tina Bryson Payne, I think. It'll come up. It'll be the first thing that comes up. Definitely get the book first. If you really, really like it, I would definitely buy the workbook. The workbook is helpful. The workbook is very, very helpful. But if you get the workbook before you've read the book, I don't think it'll go as far. I don't think it'll be as helpful. So yeah, let me know what questions you guys have after this. There will not be an ADHD Answers next Monday because it's Christmas. But the next Monday we'll be back in the new year. And just to wrap up, in the new year, so we're going to do ADHD Answers, not this Monday, but the next Monday. So that'll be the 1st of January. The next day, we're going to be launching our ADHD strength and conditioning class at the Roanoke training. And we still have a few spots left. If you're interested, that class is at 4 p.m. We've gotten some good response. And I know that the parents that have already said, yes, we're down. We know that our child needs to exercise, and we know that if he does exercise regularly, he will be 100% better. So we're coming. I know that those parents are passing the word on to other parents. And if 4 p.m. does not work for you on Tuesdays and Thursdays, have no fear. I'm working very hard on starting an additional class at some better times. Ultimately, I would love to have a second Tuesday, Thursday class, and I would love to have a Monday, Wednesday class. So yeah, we'll see what we can do. Spread the word. Let me know what questions you have. I have a bunch of emails to answer because I got parents with questions about that. I'm going to get to you guys, and have no fear. Send me your questions in the comments. If you have questions about the ADHD class, feel free to email me, Gabriel at roanokeadhd.com, and I'll get them answered to you today. If you text me late tonight, I probably won't get to it till Wednesday. So yeah, if you have any questions about today, about that book, where you can find it, or anything like that, comment below, and I'll get you the answers. All right, guys, that is it from me. I will see you in 2 weeks. Have a very Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year.